Welcome back. From high corn prices to limited hay, the challenges of the past few years have led many producers to consider every option to maximize feed and forage efficiency. That's resulted in more interest in the value of baling corn stalks. And for more on that, we turn to Cattlemen reporter John Robinson in Iowa.
I'm Cattlemen reporter John Robinson here in Ames, Iowa with Mark Lowry from New Holland Agriculture. Mark, tell me a little bit about why cattlemen are interested in baling corn stalks.
Sure, John. Corn stalks are really recognized as more of a valuable commodity that can be utilized for bedding and more recently even for a supplemental feed source. So we have a lot of interest in both of those purposes, and so that's caused us at New Holland to design our equipment tougher to meet those needs to be in the field baling stalks in the fall.
Mark, is the big baler capable of baling corn stalks directly from the factory?
Yes, it is. We have a variety of features to make this baler tough enough to handle a variety of crops, including corn stalks, miscanthus, a lot of biomass crops that are getting put through these balers now. So we have a number of things so that they're tough enough to handle whatever cattlemen want to throw at them.
What are the features that make this baler tough enough to bale corn stalks directly from the factory?
On this particular big baler unit, we've spent a lot of time redesigning the pickup to make it tough enough to bale alternative crops that are a little harder on the unit. So when we look at the pickup, we've made our pickup bands thicker than our previous generation. We've made our tines longer and thicker than the previous generation, and we've just increased the strength of the overall backbone and frame of the pickup. That's the first thing that's going to take the abuse as crops being fed into the baler. So we want to make sure that cattlemen are getting material fed in reliably so that they're more productive in the field. Another feature that really helps, particularly in corn stalks, is taking a look at a rotor cut baler for two reasons. The first reason is just the even flow that a rotor will produce in order to put that material into the baler. And the second part is to take a look at, if we're starting to think about using this as a feed supplement, to look at cutting those bales in order to make them easier to grind, or whatever the cattleman system is in order to use the bales. It might be a little easier to get that material chopped finer so that and the bales still hold together well for multiple moves so that you can use them in the best possible and most efficient way.
When you're thinking about a round baler versus a big square baler, what are some of the advantages of a big square baler compared to a round baler?
Well, when you're looking at the two, and we do offer a specialty crop round baler that's also capable of baling stalks, it really depends on the individual operation. Cattleman needs to look at their total overall acreage if they're looking at baling stalks to see what their goal in terms of throughput is. You're always going to be able to bale a little faster and get more tons per hour with the big baler. So that's one of the things to take a look at and see your number of human resources and how many people you can have in the baler and just how quickly you need to have those stalks off of there. But you will be able to achieve a higher level of throughput with a large square baler.
Thanks, Mark. Joining me now is Scott Wangsgaard with New Holland Agriculture. Scott, how do you adjust the pickup to help feed corn stalks into the baler?
Well, when you're adjusting the pickup for corn stalks, you need to keep in mind, because the corn is planted in rows, the pickup gauge wheels aren't going to work very well because they'll change from one row to the next, depending upon whether they fall in a valley or on a hump. So you need to adjust the stop on the side of the pickup so the pickup teeth are always the same distance away from the ground, so you're not getting too much dirt, but you're still picking up the corn stalks that you want.
Scott, what are some of the service items I should pay attention for before taking my baler into the field?
When you're servicing for corn stalks especially, there's a lot of dirt involved, so you need to check your chains and make sure that the chains keep tight and that they keep clean. We've got an automatic oiler on there, and you're going to want to turn that to high for doing corn stalks, so you put as much oil as possible on that, so don't forget to fill it. Also with corn stalks, there can be buildup in the chamber, so you need to make sure every couple of days or whatever when you're baling, especially the wetter corn stalks, clean out the baler and make sure that there's no buildup inside the chamber.
Talk to me a little bit about nodder issues when you're dealing with corn stalks. How do I avoid those, and how big a problem are they?
Well, we are going to see some nodder issues in corn stalks. That's just the nature of it. Because of the stocky material, you're going to have some. So we offer two kits to help prevent that. One is a needle slot baffle plate, makes the needle slot smaller, so there's less room for a stalk to stick up into that nodder as it makes it cycle. The other thing on that is the needle cleaning kit, and that goes inside the plunger, so as the needle goes through the plunger, it knocks off any trash that the needle may be bringing up into the nodder as well. The other thing is just making sure that those nodders are clean all the time. You want to clean those off and blow them off as much as possible.
Tell me a little bit about bale density. How important is it when you're baling corn stalks, and how do I adjust it?
Well, bale density is important whether it's hay or corn, but especially with corn, we don't have to worry about molding most of the time, depending if you do it dry. So you can get them as tight as possible, and then you don't have to worry, and it's just less bales to handle. So bale density is crucial, and then to adjust it, you just go into the sub screen of the first main screen, and you can up your density. But the other key there is twine. If you don't have good high quality twine, then you're not going to be able to make as dense a bale as we can push with the baler. So make sure you get that good New Holland twine.
Thanks, Scott. I'll be back with more from Ames, Iowa right after this. Welcome back. I'm John Robinson. I'm here in Ames, Iowa for Cattlemen to Cattlemen, and joining me now is Steve Peterson from Monsanto. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John.
Steve, tell me a little bit about why corn fodder is becoming an important source of cattle feed here in Iowa.
Well, Monsanto looks at this from the perspective of the corn grower, and adding value to that corn acre is extremely important to us. And as yields increase, we're seeing more and more residue on the soil, and it's important for growers to remove some of that residue to continue, especially in continuous corn, to increase yields.
Steve, tell me a little bit about the research that Monsanto has done to validate corn stover as a feed resource.
Well, Monsanto and our partners have, the last 6 years, been doing extensive research into how much stover can we remove from the ground, what are its impacts to corn yields, and really impacts to the soil, because above all, we need to protect the soil in this endeavor.
Steve, tell me a little bit about the results that cattle feeders are seeing when using corn stalks as a feed resource.
Well, we've done extensive testing with some of our partners, and we've seen a lot of impressive gains replacing corn and hay in the rations, especially when we mix the corn stover with the distiller's grains from the ethanol industry. It becomes a very low-cost ration. It's good for corn growers because as you remove the stover from the ground, you increase yields on continuous corn. And the cattle feeders have seen anywhere from inclusion rates from 20% up to over 50% in cow-calf rations.
What are the processes used to treat corn fodder, and what are the equipment that's needed for the process?
A lot of the present equipment that growers or feeders have today can be utilized to harvest the corn stover. We're looking at ways to basically bale it, and also we've used some chopping methods to harvest it, very similar to what they utilize in silage today. And the end result, by adding the calcium hydroxide is what we're presently using, we add that at about a 7% solution to the process, and it really starts breaking down the material. And it allows the cattle feeder to up his inclusion rates of corn stover and have a product that's much more digestible in the end. Normally the digestibility of the product will go up 50% over untreated corn stover.
I'm here now with Bill Kauser, owner of Kauser Cattle Company in Nevada, Iowa. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Bill, tell me a little bit about your operation.
We live here in Nevada, Iowa, which is the center of Iowa. We have a cattle feeding operation here. We're permitted for 5,200 head of one-time capacity, and we raise we're in seed production and also have commercial corn and commercial soybeans.
Tell me a little bit about why you looked at corn stalks as a feed source.
Well, over the past few years, we've utilized the corn stalks and bean stubble for many different purposes. But over the last few years, when we look at the drought conditions that have hit us, and then the economic, agronomic value that it brings to our land, it's just made us want to get further and further into the process of how can we utilize that and generate more economic value off each acre.
Bill, what have been some of the major benefits of feeding corn stover to your cattle?
Well, corn stover has actually given us another income stream, you might say, because now we can take the corn, we can harvest it and put it in the bin. We can collect the mog, in other words, the material that comes through the combine, which is the corn cob and the corn shuck and some of the leaf, put it in a bale so it doesn't touch the ground and we don't have the ash, and that allows us a feed stuff, as we did years ago when we used to feed ear corn. And then we go back and we gather up the corn stalk, and we can utilize that for bedding for our deep bedded barns, for a confinement system, or we can take it to the new cellulosic ethanol plant and make ethanol out of it, or we can go through a process of calcium oxide or calcium of some kind and use it for a feedstuff and enhance it and make it become more digestible.
Bill, tell me a little bit about the process of treating and processing the corn stalks before you feed them.
Well, what this does, it really has allowed me not to commit myself to a certain product. In other words, if I put up corn silage, I have to feed corn silage. And by doing it this way, with the 3 different streams that come through there, it allows me to be able to, if I need that for feed, we have a process that we're now developing and designing that we can attach it to our custom grinder, and we can rehydrate that bales and go through the process, apply the material, and let it, you might say, ferment for 4 or 5 days, and then feed it. And we can rotate this at a weekly pattern or 2 weekly pattern, depending on what our situation is. So what it's allowed us to do is to take a less valuable feed and turn it into a very digestible product for the animal.
Have you noticed a yield difference in your corn acres since you've started removing the stover from the field?
Well, when I put my farmer cap on, that's probably one of the greatest things that's happening on the agronomic side. One of the biggest challenges we have today as a farmer is residue management. Now, by having options of being able to take the corn stover off and go through the process and then take manure back in its traditional natural form, we're actually building these soils, and we're seeing yields increase, because what we're seeing is that now that the fertilities or the nitrogen isn't going to the stalk to break down the residue, it's going directly to plant health. So we're seeing increase in yields because our land actually warms up sooner, and our soils respond much better to that seed without all that residue on top.
Bill, that's great information. Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for coming out.
Reporting from Nevada, Iowa, this is John Robinson for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
For more information about New Holland Agriculture's full lineup of equipment, visit agriculture.newholland.com.